After finding my wife with my best friend, I had to rebuild trust in our shattered marriage. The first thing I noticed was the silence. It was one of those eerie, heavy silences that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I hadn't planned on coming home early that day, but a cancelled meeting had freed up my afternoon, and the thought of spending some extra time with Melissa felt like the perfect way to unwind. Lately, things between us had been tense, distant even, and I was hoping to reconnect, maybe even talk things through. The house was unusually quiet when I walked in. Normally, Melissa would be in the kitchen, preparing dinner or talking on the phone with her sister. But today there was nothing. Just that unsettling quiet. I called out her name. No response. Shrugging off the strange feeling in my gut, I decided to head to the backyard where we had our sauna, a recent addition that Melissa had insisted on. It had quickly become her favorite place to relax. She would often spend hours in there, decompressing after long days, and I didn't blame her. The heat was soothing, the cedar smell calming, and it gave us a sense of luxury we hadn't had before. As I approached the door to the sauna, I heard muffled voices, laughter, soft and intimate. My first thought was that Melissa must have invited a friend over for a spa day. But as I got closer, the laughter faded into something else. Something far more intimate. A chill ran down my spine, despite the heat radiating from the sauna. I stood there for a moment, frozen, not wanting to believe what my instincts were telling me. But as the moments passed, it became clear that the sounds weren't innocent. They weren't friendly. They were unmistakably sexual. My heart pounded in my chest, my mind racing as I reached for the sauna door. I wasn't sure what I would find inside, but something deep inside me already knew. I opened the door slowly, the wave of heat hitting me hard, but it was nothing compared to the sight that greeted me. There, in the dim light of the sauna, was Melissa, wrapped around another man, their bodies slick with sweat, completely entwined in each other. They didn't notice me at first, too caught up in the moment to realize they had an audience. Time seemed to stop. My breath caught in my throat, and for a moment I felt like I was outside of my own body, watching the scene unfold as if it were happening to someone else. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow, and all I could do was stand there, stunned, unable to comprehend how this was real. When Melissa finally noticed me, her eyes widened in horror. She pushed the man away, scrambling to cover herself with a towel. But the damage was done. The image of her with him, the sounds, the heat, it was seared into my brain forever. "Jason," she stammered, her voice shaking. "I can explain." But there was nothing to explain. The truth was right in front of me, and no words could undo what I had just seen. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My throat was tight, my hands trembling with a mix of rage and disbelief. The man, some stranger I didn't recognize, looked at me with wide eyes, clearly not expecting to be caught in the act. I took a step back, the realization sinking in deeper with every passing second. Melissa, my wife, the woman I had loved and trusted for years, had betrayed me in the most unforgivable way. And here I was, standing in the sweltering heat of the sauna, my world crumbling around me. Without another word, I turned and walked away, my mind spinning. The betrayal, the lies, the thought of her with someone else, it was too much to process all at once. I needed air. I needed space. I needed to get out of there before I did something I would regret. I could hear her calling after me, her voice desperate and pleading, but I didn't stop. I couldn't bear to look at her, not now. Maybe not ever again. As I stepped out into the cool evening air, my heart ached with the weight of what I had just witnessed. My marriage was over, and the life I thought I had was a lie. And as the reality of it all began to sink in, I realized that this betrayal would change everything. I stumbled out of the sauna, my heart racing and my mind a whirlpool of emotions. I needed to escape, to breathe, to process what I had just witnessed. Each step I took away from the house felt like a step toward sanity, but with every breath, the reality of the betrayal clawed at me. I drove aimlessly for a while, the steering wheel gripped tightly in my hands. My thoughts were a chaotic storm of anger, heartbreak, and disbelief. How could she do this to me? I thought of all the times Melissa had assured me that everything was fine, all the moments we shared, laughing, planning, dreaming. It all felt like a cruel joke now. Eventually, I found myself at the waterfront, a quiet place where I often went to think. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow over the water, but I felt nothing. I was numb, lost in a fog of betrayal. I sat on a bench, staring blankly at the horizon as the sun dipped lower. Time passed, but I didn't notice. My phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a text from Melissa. "Please, Jason. Let's talk. I'm so sorry." I scoffed at the screen. Sorry? Sorry for what? For getting caught? For destroying our lives? I didn't respond, my fingers hovering over the screen, unsure of how to convey the turmoil inside me. After what felt like an eternity, I decided I couldn't avoid her forever. I needed answers, needed to understand how someone I had loved so deeply could betray me so brutally. Reluctantly, I typed back. "Fine. Let's talk." We agreed to meet at a coffee shop nearby. As I drove there, my stomach churned with a mix of dread and anger. I knew this conversation wouldn't be easy, and I wasn't sure how it would end. When I arrived, I found Melissa sitting at a corner table, her eyes red from crying. She looked small and vulnerable, and for a moment I felt a pang of sympathy. But it was quickly overshadowed by the anger boiling inside me. "Jason," she said softly, her voice trembling as I approached. "Thank you for coming." I didn't reply. I sat down across from her, crossing my arms as I tried to keep my emotions in check. "What do you want to say?" I didn't think you'd come home so early," she started, her words fumbling. "I didn't plan for any of this to happen. It just did. It just happened." I echoed, incredulous. "You think that makes it better? You think that's an excuse?" Her eyes filled with tears again and she shook her head. "No, I know it's not an excuse. I messed up, Jason. I don't expect you to forgive me. But you have to understand things have been different between us." "Different how?" I shot back, my voice rising. "You mean different like how you've been lying to me? Sneaking around with another man? That kind of different?" I know. She cried, her voice breaking. "But I felt so alone. We were drifting apart, and I didn't know how to reach you. Andrew was there for me in a way you weren't." "Andrew." The name struck me like a physical blow. "So you admit it? You were cheating on me with him?" "Yes," she whispered, covering her face with her hands. "I thought I could hide it. I didn't want to hurt you, but I ended up doing the worst thing possible." I sat back, the weight of her confession settling heavily between us. "You didn't want to hurt me? You don't think sleeping with my best friend hurts?" "I know," she exclaimed, desperation in her voice. "I regret it. I wish I could take it back. But you have to believe me when I say it wasn't just about him. It was about us too. I was trying to cope with how distant we had become." "Distant?" I replied, incredulous. "You think cheating is the solution to distance? We could have talked about it. We could have worked on our marriage. But you chose this." Melissa looked down, tears streaming down her face. "I know I didn't make the right choices. I'm so sorry for everything. I never wanted to hurt you. I felt lost." Her words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Part of me wanted to reach out to comfort her, but I couldn't. The betrayal was too fresh, too raw. "Is there anything left for us?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Can we even fix this?" Melissa looked up at me, her expression filled with a mixture of hope and despair. "I want to try, Jason. I love you and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. I just need a chance to prove it." A chance? Could I really give her that? The thought of forgiving her, of opening myself up to more pain, felt unbearable. But the love I once had for her fought against the anger and betrayal. "I don't know," I said finally, my voice cracking. "I need time to think. I can't just pretend everything is okay. Right now, I'm not sure I even want to be married anymore." The look on her face was devastating, but I couldn't let my emotions sway me. I needed to protect myself first. "I'll give you space," she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. "But I hope you'll consider talking again. I really want to fix this." As I got up to leave, a part of me felt hollow. I was walking away from the woman I had loved, the woman I thought I would spend my life with, but I was also walking away from the pain. "Goodbye, Melissa," I said, forcing the words out. I turned and walked away, the weight of the world on my shoulders, knowing that whatever came next would be a battle, one I wasn't sure I was ready to fight. The days that followed felt like a blur, each moment stretching into eternity. I went through the motions of life, but everything felt different, hollow. I returned to work, but the usual banter with colleagues felt forced, as if I were wearing a mask to hide the turmoil inside me. Friends reached out, sensing something was off, but I brushed them off with vague excuses. Melissa texted me frequently, each message filled with apologies and pleas for a second chance. I read them but didn't respond. Every time I saw her name pop up on my phone, my chest tightened with a mixture of anger and sadness. The woman I loved was now a source of pain, and I wasn't ready to face her again. One evening, as I sat in my living room staring blankly at the TV, my phone rang. It was Andrew, the man who had shattered my world. Part of me wanted to throw the phone across the room, but another part of me felt a strange curiosity. What could he possibly want? "Hey, Jason," he said, his voice surprisingly calm. "I know this is awkward, but I think we need to talk." I scoffed. "Talk? What's there to talk about? You took my wife. You destroyed my marriage." "I know, and I'm sorry for that," he replied. "But I think we both deserve to hear each other out. There's more to this than you think." I paused, considering his words. I was filled with rage, but a part of me wanted to understand what had driven him to betray me too. "Fine. Let's meet." We agreed to meet at a bar that night, and as I drove there, I felt a mix of dread and anticipation. I couldn't shake the feeling that this conversation could either bring closure or ignite further conflict. When I arrived, Andrew was already seated at a table in the back, a beer in front of him. He looked almost uncomfortable, fidgeting with his drink as I approached. "Hey," I said, my tone clipped. "Let's get this over with." "Right," he nodded, running a hand through his hair. "I want to start by saying that I never intended for any of this to happen. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake." "A mistake?" I echoed, disbelief flooding my voice. "You think sleeping with my wife is just a mistake? You knew she was married." "I know, and I'm not trying to justify it," he said quickly. "But you need to understand that things were complicated. Melissa and I were talking a lot during that time. She was confiding in me about her struggles in the marriage, how disconnected she felt." "Disconnected? So that's your excuse?" I shot back. "You thought it was okay to step in and play the savior?" Andrew sighed, looking genuinely remorseful. "I didn't see it that way at first. I cared about her as a friend, and when she started opening up about her feelings, it blurred the lines. I never meant for it to go that far." "Yet it did," I said, anger boiling beneath the surface. "You took advantage of her vulnerability." "I know," he admitted, his voice low. "And I regret it every day. But I want you to know that I never wanted to hurt you. I've been a terrible friend and I can't take back what happened, but I'm here to apologize." I let his words hang in the air, the weight of betrayal heavy between us. "Do you even care about how this affects me? You've ruined my life." "I do care," he replied earnestly. "I'm sorry for what I did and I'm sorry for the pain it's caused you. But I can't change the past. I just want to be honest with you about everything." I leaned back in my chair, feeling the anger bubble beneath the surface. "Honest? What does that even mean now? Your honesty won't undo the damage." Andrew took a deep breath, his expression turning serious. "I want to help you understand what happened between us. I think it could help both of us move on." "Help me?" I scoffed. "You think I can move on after all of this?" "Yes, I do," he said, looking me straight in the eyes. "But only if you're willing to confront it. You need to talk to Melissa to get your own answers. You can't escape this forever." I clenched my jaw, his words striking a nerve. Deep down, I knew he was right. I had to face Melissa again. I needed closure, not just for her sake but for my own. "I don't know if I can do that," I admitted, my voice low. "Every time I think of her, I feel a wave of anger and betrayal." "I get that," Andrew replied. But think about it. You can't truly move on without having that conversation. You owe it to yourself to know the full story. As much as I hated to admit it, he was right. I had to confront the woman who had shattered my world and take back control of my narrative. Fine, I said, finally feeling a sense of determination. I'll talk to her. But this doesn't mean I forgive you. Understood, Andrew said, relief washing over his face. I wouldn't expect you to. Just know that I'm truly sorry for what I've done. I nodded, and after a few more strained moments we parted ways. The conversation had given me a renewed sense of purpose. I was still filled with anger, but it was a start toward reclaiming my life. That night I couldn't sleep. Thoughts of Melissa consumed me. I knew I had to see her again, to confront her about everything, to finally lay everything on the table. But deep down I also feared what that confrontation would bring. The next morning I texted her. Can we meet? We need to talk. I hit send and waited, my heart racing. I didn't know what I would say or how it would end, but I knew it was time to face the truth. The moment I hit send on the message to Melissa, a knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. I paced around my apartment, each step echoing the turmoil in my mind. What would I say to her? How could I express the whirlwind of emotions I was feeling? I wasn't even sure if I wanted to hear what she had to say. After what felt like an eternity, my phone buzzed. It was a reply from Melissa. Yes, of course. Where and when? I took a deep breath, my mind racing. How about the cafe near the waterfront? I texted back. It was a place we had gone to many times, a neutral ground yet filled with memories. Okay. See you there at 3. When the time came, I arrived early, sitting at a table by the window, watching the water shimmer under the afternoon sun. My heart pounded as I replayed our last encounter in my mind. I had so many questions, so much anger, and a desperate need for closure. When Melissa walked in, she looked nervous, her hands fidgeting with her purse strap. She spotted me and approached slowly, her expression a mix of hope and fear. Hey, she said softly as she sat down, her voice shaky. Hey, I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. We sat in silence for a moment, the air thick with unspoken words. Finally, I broke the silence. So, I guess we need to talk. Yes, we do, she said, her eyes meeting mine. I've been waiting for this. I don't even know where to start, I admitted. I can't wrap my head around what happened. How could you do this to us? To me? Melissa took a deep breath, her eyes welling with tears. I'm so sorry, Jason. I never wanted to hurt you. I wish I could take it back. But you can't, I interrupted, feeling the anger rise again. You chose to betray me. You chose to sleep with Andrew. That doesn't just go away with an apology. I know, she cried, her voice rising. But you have to understand that I was feeling so lost. I didn't know how to reach you anymore. It felt like you were shutting me out. Shutting you out? I echoed, incredulous. I thought we were just going through a rough patch. I didn't realize you were feeling this way. We could have talked about it. I know, she said, her voice trembling. But at the time I felt like I had no one to turn to. And then Andrew was there and it spiraled out of control. I made a horrible mistake. I stared at her, searching for any sign of sincerity. What did you expect would happen? Did you think I wouldn't find out? No. I never wanted you to find out, she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. I was scared. Scared of losing you, scared of what you'd think of me. I thought I could fix things on my own. By cheating. I shook my head, feeling a mix of disbelief and hurt. That's not how love works, Melissa. You don't fix things by destroying trust. I know, she sobbed, her face in her hands. I'm so ashamed. I've been living with this guilt since it happened and I can't change what I did. All I can do is ask for your forgiveness. Forgiveness. I repeated, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. You think I can just forgive you after everything? You shattered my trust and it will never be the same. I know, she whispered. But I love you, Jason. I want to fight for us. I want to show you that I can change, that I can be the wife you deserve. I wanted to believe her, but the scars of betrayal were deep. How can I trust you again? How can I believe that you won't do this again? Melissa looked at me with desperation in her eyes. I'll do anything. I'll go to counseling, I'll be open and honest about everything. Just please give me a chance to prove that I can be better. Her words tugged at something inside me, but the fear of getting hurt again held me back. I need time, Melissa. I can't just jump back into this. You've broken something between us and it won't heal overnight. I understand, she said softly. Take all the time you need. But please don't shut me out completely. I want to make this right. The weight of her plea hung in the air, and I felt a flicker of something, perhaps hope, perhaps pity. I still loved her, despite everything. But love alone wasn't enough to fix what had been broken. I can't promise anything, I finally said, my voice heavy. But I'll think about it. I just need to figure out what I want. Thank you, she whispered, relief washing over her face. That's all I ask. We sat in silence for a moment, the tension still thick between us. I looked out the window at the water, feeling lost in a sea of confusion. There was a part of me that wanted to cling to the hope of rekindling what we had, but another part warned me to tread carefully. As we left the cafe, I felt the burden of our conversation settle over me like a shroud. I had taken the first step towards confronting the truth, but the path ahead was uncertain. I didn't know if I could forgive her, or if I even wanted to try. But for the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of possibility. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward if I could muster the courage to face the truth, whatever that might be. After our conversation at the cafe, a strange mixture of hope and anxiety filled the days that followed. I spent a lot of time alone, reflecting on everything that had happened. I didn't want to rush into any decisions. I needed to process the pain and betrayal, to allow myself to feel every complicated emotion. Melissa continued to reach out, her texts filled with apologies and reassurances. I could feel the sincerity in her words, but that didn't make it any easier to forget what she had done. I found myself torn between my lingering love for her and the anger that still simmered beneath the surface. One evening, after a long day at work, I decided to call my sister, Sarah. She had always been a voice of reason, and I knew she could offer some perspective. "Hey, Jason. It's good to hear from you," she said cheerfully. "Hey, Sarah. I need to talk," I replied, my voice heavy. I filled her in on everything: the affair, my confrontation with Melissa, and the turmoil swirling inside me. "I just don't know what to do," I confessed. "I love her, but can I ever trust her again?" "Trust is hard to rebuild, especially after something like that," she said thoughtfully. "But people can change if they really want to. It's about whether you believe she can change and if you're willing to work through it together." "But how do I know?" I asked, frustration creeping into my voice. "What if it happens again?" "You'll never know for sure," she said gently. "But you'll have to decide what's more important, holding on to the past or working towards a future. It might take time, but it's your choice." Her words lingered in my mind long after we hung up. I realized that I was at a crossroads, and the path I chose would define my future. I could either let anger and resentment consume me, or I could try to heal and find a way forward. A few days later, I found myself sitting on the porch of our house, the sun setting behind me, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood. I knew it was time to face Melissa again. I couldn't keep running from the situation. "Can we talk?" I texted her, my heart racing at the thought. She replied almost instantly. "Yes. I'll be there soon." When she arrived, I noticed the nervousness in her demeanor, the way she fidgeted with her hands. We sat on the porch, the silence stretching between us as we both tried to find the right words. "Thank you for meeting me," I started, my voice steady. "I've been thinking a lot about everything." Melissa looked at me with wide, hopeful eyes. "I'm so glad you reached out. I've been worried that you would shut me out for good." "I can't promise that everything will go back to normal," I continued, feeling the weight of the moment. "But I'm willing to try. I want to work through this, but it has to be different. You have to be fully committed to rebuilding our trust." "I will," she said, her voice earnest. I'm ready to do whatever it takes. I love you, Jason, and I want to fix this. I don't want to lose you. I nodded, feeling a flicker of hope. We need to be open and honest about everything, even the uncomfortable parts. I want to know what led you to make those choices. Melissa took a deep breath, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I felt so alone and lost. I thought you didn't care anymore. I should have come to you instead of seeking comfort elsewhere. I take full responsibility for what I did. I need to hear that from you, I said, feeling a weight lift slightly off my shoulders. But I also need you to understand that rebuilding trust is a process. It won't happen overnight. I understand, she replied, determination etched on her face. I'm committed to working through this with you. I don't want to lose the life we've built together. We talked for hours, laying everything on the table, our fears, our hopes, and the painful realities of our relationship. It was difficult and emotional, but for the first time since I caught her with Andrew, I felt a glimmer of something resembling hope. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow around us, I realized that I didn't have all the answers. But I was willing to try. We agreed to go to counseling together, to seek professional help to navigate the complexities of our relationship. I can't promise that this will be easy, I said, my voice firm yet hopeful. But I want to believe in us again. I want to find a way to heal. Melissa smiled through her tears, a look of relief washing over her. Thank you, Jason. That means everything to me. I'm ready to fight for our marriage. As I watched her, I felt a sense of clarity. The journey ahead would be challenging, filled with ups and downs, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. We both had work to do, but maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. And so, as the night deepened and stars began to twinkle overhead, I took a deep breath, ready to embrace the future, whatever it might hold.